3 years after the last season of the show, the dynamic duo returns in their first big screen adventure in The Mandalorian and Grogu.
So we jump into this movie. It's the first Star Wars film we've gotten since Rise of Skywalker in 2019.
It's crazy.
Can't believe it's been 7 years since we've gotten a Star Wars film. This takes place, obviously, after the events of Season 3 of Mandalorian and Grogu. We get them on the big screen here. You've got Mando working for the New Republic as kind of their hired gun bounty hunter going after, targets of the Empire and trying to get information to help them make advancements to, bring down the Empire here. And it just kind of jumps off. You jump off him going and hunting down these bad guys, and he runs across, the Hutts, who are kind of like the major crime overlords in the area that he's trying to go. So you have this whole adventure on going out and working, with the New Republic and trying to bring back, a member of the Hutt family for the Hutts. So you've got a little bit of crossover here where they're trying to kind of quote unquote work with each other to, get information off of each other and everything like that. So it definitely felt very much like, in my opinion, what could have been another season of The Mandalorian and Grogu here. And I know that's what we were originally supposed to get, but yeah, man, this was a lot of fun. I had a good time watching it. What'd you think about it?
I mean, it felt like a long episode of the series because probably the weakest point of the film is the plot. It's very bare bones and basic. As you said, it's kind of like an episode of the TV show. Originally, Season 4 was supposed to revolve around Thrawn and setting up Ahsoka Season 2, which we're still waiting on, 4 years after its first season. And they decided to scrap that. The scripts were ready to do, but they decided to do the film. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. Like, past the plot being very safe and bare bones and basic, there was a good amount of fun action. You got a lot of throwbacks to the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy a little bit with some of the droids and other things in there. And there's plenty of humor. I mean, if you love Mandalorian and Grogu, if you love little Grogu, there's plenty of fun, cute moments where you're going to laugh and you're going to awe and you're going to have, some fun with that. But I'm glad they gave a little bit of growth to Grogu in here. You get to see, after, 7 years, that he's finally starting to move a little bit out of the baby. Well, he's still kind of a baby, but you're seeing him be a little more independent and helping out more and being able to do a rescue mission on his own and stuff. And it was really nice to finally see a little bit of growth in the character. Like, you love the cute little Yoda, but there has to become a point where they have to start thinking about, all right, when do we start aging him up? When do we allow him to speak? When do we allow him to be a little more independent and stuff? Because they're going to keep going with Grogu for a long time. It's basically about the only thing they have going because of all the other films have been gone to the wayside, and now we have several more that are in the works. I think the only one that we have complete is Starfighter that's going to be coming out.
Yeah.
But we've got the Rey movie, so it is kind of crazy. It's 7 years in between Star Wars films, and it was 7 years ago that Mandalorian premiered. So from the time it premiered to now, there has not been another Star Wars film. And it was just wild when we were seeing one, because we had Solo, we had Rogue One, we had a lot of stuff, and because they shifted to TV for a while, and now they're trying to get back into Star Wars being more of a film franchise. And I think Mandalorian and Grogu is a fun way to kick that back off. It's not something that's setting up a lot of new lore. It's not really setting up anything. It's just a Star Wars film to go to the theater and have fun with.
Yeah, and it kind of just leaves you open. If they wanted to go back and put that back on TV, they could. Mm-hmm. And it very much felt like that by the end. Star Wars does kind of feel like a franchise that's kind of half in, half out with so many things right now that it's in flux. What I will give them credit for is the amazing job they do on the animated side of things. Like, Maul Shadow Lord, if you haven't watched that on Disney Plus, fantastic short animated season that they just had. I think it was like 8 episodes of it that are on Disney Plus that you can watch. Phenomenal television there, like a phenomenally written show. Love the show from his perspective. What they've always done well are the animated side of things. But there is a lot in flux as far as TV and film right now because, like you said, this was originally going to be a season 4 of Mandalorian, not really on the movie side of things. And you also had season 2 of Ahsoka, which I still blows my mind that it was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be 4 years between the time we got season 1 and season 2 because it came out in
early
2027. Right, and which is still just the passage of time anymore is just insane. But, and then that was supposed to originally culminate in a film where you had both Ahsoka and Mandalorian and Grogu, and it was supposed to be this big epic film that was going to close all of it, and they kind of scrapped it to do Mandalorian and Grogu as a film now, which I'm still kind of on the fence on how I feel about that necessarily, because I did love that crossover between Mando and Ahsoka. Like, those were some of the best episodes of not only The Mandalorian, but the Ahsoka series as well. Like, you had, them, interacting and doing things together, and that was a ton of fun, but it doesn't feel like we're getting any of that end now. Like, you're going to get season 2 of Ahsoka, and then what? Like, is kind of where you leave yourself with that. But getting back to the movie, yeah, this, like, outside of the thin plot, like you mentioned, I still had a ton of fun. You get the humor that you get in the Mandalorian and Grogu series. Like, you could tell this is geared more towards a younger audience, especially with the inclusion of, a character like Grogu, who, everybody loves, but you definitely see it being more popular with a younger audience, which is awesome, because we need younger people to get into things like this so they can have some longevity. But it was still a lot of fun. You and I were both laughing at several points in this film, but they do a good job of that, like you said, mixing in a lot. There's a ton of action in this movie, a ton of fighting that the Mandalorian does in this. Like, there's a pretty solid amount of this movie dedicated to him fighting, different variations of stormtroopers and other creatures and
vehicles and
like, you get all the explosions and the fights and all the fun action stuff. Like, they found a good way to balance all of that across what was a fairly thin plot. Like, this felt like a prolonged episode, like you said, of what could have been an episode in the season that they put in film length, which is fine. Like, I'm not gonna beat it up too much for that, because what we got was really fun and entertaining.
Yeah, and like you said, the basic plot, Mando is helping out the New Republic by tracking down Empire bounties, and he has to do one that's to rescue a hut for the twin huts, because they want to, make sure that Rhoda is kind of out of the picture there. And that's basically it. Like, that's the basic of the story. He does a couple bounty missions, then he has to do that one for the hut, and everything just unfurls from there. So it is very thin on the plot, but it does just enough to just have some fun with it. Like, Jeremy Allen White was fun as Rhoda. It was really took a little bit to get used to having a hut speaking English, so perfectly and out there, and also being a ripped slug. Like, it took a little bit to get used to the look of that, but. Yeah, like you said, you had so many big set pieces, because you had AT-ATs and you had other vehicles like that, and you had a lot of starship flights and battles and stuff. Got to see an X-Wing battle in here, and you got to see, like, sword play and axes and blasters and a bunch of different weapons and stuff. And you also got Zeb, who, everyone knows, as you said, from the animation that they did so well with these animated series, and we get to see more of Zeb. He made a little cameo before, but now he gets to be, he's not huge in the film, but he's a good part of the film in there. And they brought Steve Bloom back, who's also Wolverine, as we know from the animated series. He's voiced a lot of big characters, so it was great to bring back the voice actor for Zeb and let him have this part in the film and stuff. But there was a lot of cameos and stuff like that. You got a lot of people who have worked in other parts of the Star Wars universe who got to come back and play their characters. So you've also got Dave Filoni and a few others who make some cameos. You've got directors and people who worked on The Mandalorian get to play some roles in there. You've got some other characters that we got to see show up in The Mandalorian, make a little return, and we were both like, oh, hey, they brought him back. And it was just a lot of fun. Like, I just had a good time with it. You can go and be critical of it because of the thin plot, that it's not really setting up anything else. Like, you could have more adventures with the Mandalorian and Grogu after this, but there's no real big plot point that really sets up, like, there's a new big bad or a Death Star or something like that. Thinking that, first Star Wars film in 7 years, what is it setting up? Really nothing. It's just something to go and have fun with Star Wars. Like I said, there's so many references to the original trilogy because you get Jabba mentioned, you get a lot of that. You get some mentions of the prequel trilogy in there with some of the robots and droids that show up. You get a few just nods and hints, and you got some lines that are repeated from other characters that get said in there. It's just kind of a fun love letter to Star Wars. It's not trying to do anything groundbreaking or new. It plays it safe. But the biggest point, if the plot isn't great, it's how does it do humor? How does it do action? How does it do these other things that can, okay, I'll just kind of turn my plot off to the brain. I'm watching it handle the humor right. You had a lot of fun with Grogu being silly and goofy, but also some moments like, all right, yeah, he's becoming a little man now. And you also get some reference with him that I'm not going to spoil that was really fun throwback. But it was just a ton of fun. Like the action sequences were great. It was fun. It was really quick, just battle action. I will poke fun a little bit that they had to remove Pedro's helmet in the film just so you know that Pedro's there, because we left in season 3 that he had taken his helmet off, but then he was able to get back in the good graces of the Mandalorian to feel like he's a part of it again. He's not an outcast. He's got the helmet on. He's not going to be seen. And the way they did it, it was just kind of, all right, we just want to have one sequence where Pedro is seen as Pedro.
Right, and it kind of plays into how the film ends as well with, a line that he says in the beginning of the movie that clearly paid off by the end. But yeah, I mean, you had to throw out that you knew he was physically there and not just doing his voice lines like he did for pretty much the bulk of the last season of The Mandalorian, where you obviously didn't see his face at all, and he was nowhere present during any of that filming.
Because he hasn't been busy at all.
Yeah, he's only done one or two other things in the meantime with all of that. He's not one of the busiest actors in Hollywood or anything, but yeah, I mean, what you kind of summed it up perfectly, where you were like, if you don't give us a ton plot wise, do you make up for it in other areas? And like I said, we get it in spades and action, we get it in humor, we get it in visuals. Like visually, it's a beautifully shot film, like stunning. Like it blows my mind the way they can make these planets and these things come to life in Star Wars, and it's a very strong suit for them. That overall, it has been. The sound in it is incredible too. Like if you're one of those overly film nerdy people like we are that pay attention to things like that when you get into action films, the sound was incredible in it. And obviously we did, up our experience a little bit going and sitting in the moving seats as well. That kind of added a lot of extra layer of fun to a film like this, which is totally warranted if you get a chance to do something like that.
There's even subtlety when the ship is just like floating into space. You're just kind of
waving
drifting and waving a little bit. It added another layer to it.
It does, and that's the perfect vehicle for a film like this. If you're ever on the fence about sitting in those types of seats, it is a little pricier, which can be problematic with literally how expensive everything is these days. But if you're looking to treat yourself and try it, this would be the type of film to do it for. It was awesome. We had a ton of fun.
It was well worth it.
We had a ton of fun. We would have had fun with the movie regardless of being in those seats, but it does add a little bit of extra. You're in the movie, you kind of feel it a little bit more, and it was fun to have that experience as well, which can affect how we view a movie too. Like if we have a good experience with that, like I didn't really feel like it was off-putting any when we did it, and we had it ramped up to the highest intensity.
I had to keep checking it because at a time kind of take you down a level. I'm like, no, I am going 88 miles per hour. You're maxing this out.
Yeah,
I'm doing everything.
We're jumping to hyperspace here. We have to do the full bit of it, but. Yeah, I mean, it delivers that. Like, I think we've gotten so used to, and this is where Marvel is both awesome and very frustrating for other forms of film and entertainment, where with Marvel, you got so used to everything being connected to each other and it having to be, and this leading to this, and this is leading to this, and you can reference this for this, that with a property like this, that for a lot of times is a lot of things are canon in the universe and you can make references to, it doesn't always have to be connected to everything. And this felt very much like its own standalone adventure, kind of like a Solo or, Rogue One, which at the time, Rogue One just felt like a standalone that just happened to end as epically as it could have with the Darth Vader scene to kind of lead into episode 4. But everything else wasn't really connected to everything else going on. And I think this is what they're trying to do. It felt really more like a love letter to all Star Wars fans, which is something, Dave and Jon Favreau have, wanted and made an effort stronger to do to get people reconnected to Star Wars. And I think in this, it does very much feel like that love letter to hardcore Star Wars fans a little bit, where you're not outside of the plot, you're getting, like you said, the callbacks, the winks and the nods. And if you've been paying attention to everything, you'll see all the little references and the winks and the nods, like you and I were we were just like, hey, hey, this is cool. This person showed up. And it really did feel like that love letter to Star Wars fans, where it's just like, hey, we are trying to rope in new people, but this is also something that you can enjoy if you've paid attention to everything. We'll give you some fan service here, and I think they did a good job with that.
Yeah, because at times it can feel like Return of the Jedi. You get a lot of nods to that, with, of course, having the twin huts there, but also being in their palace and having the trap floor. But then it can also feel like Attack of the Clones, like you're in the city and everything, which you also get Martin Scorsese playing a role that he's just kind of doing whatever he wants to in here. And it was fun to see him play a goofy, silly alien creature that he's voicing that didn't want to have anything to do with Mando. Like, no, leave me alone. Like, and it's all that wink and the nod of just characters not paying attention very well, because he's like, oh, you're looking for Rhoda the Hutt? And he points to a literal poster right next to him. Like, he's right there. You can see where he's going. Good bounty hunting there. Like, you can pay to, but it was that fun tongue-in-cheek. There's a lot of references to different aspects, and of course, having Zeb in there, you also get more references to the animation world and stuff. You would have kind of liked a little more connection, because, I mean, Season 3 ended with Mando at that house, kind of trying to figure out what he's going to do, but you had that underlying, like, all right, what's going on with the other Mandalorian, or with the other people around there, and the Darksaber, and where Gideon is, like, because we kind of got to open up the cloning and stuff with that. And you don't really touch on that in here. This is very much a wink and a nod that, hey, we see his house, we see the Naboo fighter that he had and stuff still. We end up giving him a new ship in here and getting back to that, which was kind of just, oh yeah, well, here's your pay for what you just did. And like, oh, okay, so that's as simple and basic as they're going to do. There's no elaborate story of how he gets his ship, a ship back to what he used to have. It's just like, yeah, here, we found this for you. Why don't you take it as payment?
Right.
It's like, okay, I guess that's all the explanation. But it is very simple in that fact. It's not trying to do anything incredibly risky or out there with its story and what it does. It's just letting you see Mando as a bounty hunter, going and collecting people, and then getting to see Grogu have a little bit of growth, of being a little more independent, and his back and forth with Boba Frick and the little guys there, and having them show up on their little speeder. Like, you get that sequence of, like, Mando sees someone's coming and he zooms in with his helmet, and you're like, all right, who is it? A bounty hunter who's coming after him? No, but your little bitty helper guys are there just to be cute and funny. Especially one of them gets picked up, and it's not a big spoiler. He gets picked up by an animal creature in there. And he's like, oh no, he's got me. Like, the little movement he did was in the mouth. Like, I will give up and give props to just the puppetry that they did in here with Grogu and with those little creatures and stuff was just so much fun. And it's definitely a love letter to classic Star Wars, of just how many creatures and characters in the original trilogy were puppets and were practical costumes and stuff. Right. A lot of fun to be had with the practical puppetry, because you can tell they move and they're everything else. They're animatronics and they're puppets. But it just added that Star Wars charm to it, that classic Star Wars charm.
Yeah, for sure. And there's so much fun stuff to do with that. And that's where, like I said, it does get a little more geared towards the younger audience, where you have the cute little creatures. I will say, like, some of my favorite humorous moments involved them and Grogu and stuff, especially the scene with, Mando being down and out for the count, and him trying to build the shelter to hold him in, to kind of protect him from everyone else. And you have his legs sticking out, and he's trying to push him through, and he's banging his head on the back wall. It was just like little funny things like that. And
Let's try again.
Yeah, if you see it, you know what I mean. It's so funny. Like the whole theater was cracking up at that one. That was a very funny moment. And then my other personal favorite, it's just so subtle, but it had me just cackling off to the side by myself. But it's when the little creatures with Grogu go to rescue Mando, and then they go to leave. And the ship is about this big to hold them and Grogu. And Mando's looking at it. He's just like, I got to find another way out of here. I can't go with you on that. Grogu's like, come on, we got to go.
Like, I can't fit in that
He
ship.
was like, I'm not going to make it. He's like, I got to find another way out of here. He's like, you go ahead. I'll figure it out.
It would have been funny to see, like, have Mando hop on the top of it and get carried to another area.
Kind of ride it like a skateboard or something. Like, I don't know if it would have been able to get off the ground with him being, like, but it was, I don't know why, it tickled me. That was very, very funny. But yeah, it does have a little bit of everything. Like you said, you get the light plot, but they more than make up for it in entertainment. Like, this was a thoroughly entertaining movie. If you're just wanting to go watch a fun Star Wars story for a little over 2 hours, because I think it was like 2 hours and 15 minutes or so. It was just a little over 2 hours. You can kind of equate it to what I would consider to be like a season 3.5 of Mandalorian, where he kind of goes off on his own, doing his own thing. It's not really connected to the other Mandalorians that you were used to. Like, obviously, you had what's her name's Mandalorian character that was kind of...
And my brain has been blanking on everything today.
It has. But that whole story that they were setting up with that, and then obviously you had the presence of Thrawn with Ahsoka, and those imminent fights that are coming where you could have... I really wish and hope that they would have gone back and done a fourth season of this. It's still kind of up in the air on whether they're going to actually do it or not, because they may just be rearranging some things, and I hope that's the case. But so much is up in the air with Star Wars right now that it's really hard to see the vision and the direction that they're going. One, because they're keeping so many things close to the vest here, but I really, really want to see them kind of have some finality like there, because if you were going into this thinking this is going to be the finality of Mandalorian and Grogu here, you're going to be disappointed, because it's not really set up to be like that. It's like its own individual offside story. Like, it's outside of what you've already gotten from Mando, but you just get to see Mando, being the bounty hunter that he's supposed to be. And you get the growth from Grogu. Like, is that going to lead to anything? It's still kind of up in the air, but if you're just looking for like a really fun one-off story for them to put on the big screen and have a good time with, it's very, very, very entertaining. And for that, I will give them props.
And it's also something that you don't necessarily have to have watched The Mandalorian, because it is that disconnected. Like, if this was your first time with Mando and Grogu, you get enough to see their bond and references to what they've been through and everything else. Like, it helps to have that set up between Ahsoka and between the Mandalorian show. But it is something that they've made to, as you said, to be more standalone. So if you haven't watched anything else, you could go in here and have a fun time. It's just a silly, goofy, kind of over-the-top Star Wars film. Like, it can be a little slapsticky at times, and it can be dark. Like, as a dad, you can go in and say, this is very much a family-centric film for the kids and stuff, but it does have some moments where it gets pretty violent, and you get a few jump scares, and you get some things where my youngest was kind of squirming in her chair, like, especially with the biggest creature that they introduce into here, because they introduce a lot of different creatures, kind of throwing out just a lot of different species and everything else. You get a pretty big one that was a pretty intense scene, but also that silly goofiness of, like, when they were in the trash compactor in A New Hope, of how they're standing here in garbage, but then Luke can be grabbed and dragged underneath, and like, they're like ankle deep in water. How is he getting dragged? And they kind of poke fun of that with that sequence, because Mando's able to walk around on the surface, but then he's also able to go like well below water, to somehow this gigantic creature can be within here and stuff as well. So that was a fun little kind of nodding joke back at A New Hope, of like how you can be in such a shallow area but have this depth of water below you where you can disappear. Like, I'm like, I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, and that's part of the whole love letter to longtime Star Wars fans, where if you know some of the silliness and the absurdity of and non-practicality of some of these set pieces and situations, like, they do poke fun at that, and they do have They do have fun with it. And yeah, it does get a little darker at times. It does get, like you said, you get a little bit of everything. It's not too dark and too terrifying that it's going to scare kids tremendously, but it does have some more intense moments.
And my wife got jump scared by one of the creatures.
I remember seeing that. I laughed very hard at that. I'm just like, got her. But it was fun. Like I said, it had a little bit of everything. You have the whimsical, you have the humor, you have the intensity, you have the action. Like it's a very well plot aside, well-rounded movie. Like you get a little bit of everything, and I think that's what makes a platform like Star Wars so special, is because you can do so many things with it, and it works. Mm-hmm. Because if you want to be silly and funny, you could be silly and funny. It's creatures and robots and people fighting in space over control, like in on various planets and things like that. It can be very silly and absurd, and they lean into it when it works. And they can also have the heart and the drama and the warmness that you get with the relationship between Mando and Grogu, where you see why he's the father figure protecting over Grogu, and you see him being very much Papa Mando in a lot of cases to Grogu, but also he turns up that intensity when he needs to, and he goes and he's such a good fighter too. Like it's a lot of fun to see. Like you get so many different elements thrown together like this, and they all work so well together, and it's something not a lot of like properties are good at doing, mixing, but it's something that lends itself really well to this science fiction fantasy kind of realm that Star Wars has gotten really good at over the last several decades. They're not without their problems, obviously, because we jokingly say nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. Mm-hmm. And this film does have a lot of heavy criticism from people that were expecting X and they got Y. So it's all in how you choose to go and see a film like this. If you just go in with the expectation that's going to be super connected to what you've already seen, you're probably going to be a little bit let down. But if you go into it with the mindset like, hey, this is a fun one-off adventure for characters that you've grown to love over the last several years, you're going to have a good time. Like go in not expecting it to connect to literally everything else that you've seen from them, and kind of just take it on its own merit as a standalone story that's just a good fun time, and I think you'll have a lot of enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, don't expect it to be like episode 10 or it's going to be something big and groundbreaking. And I think it's also hard for some because Andor was the last live action Star Wars we got, which was dark and gritty and emotional and incredibly done. And then we jump into the silly and over the top with Mandalorian and Grogu. You do have to temper those expectations that you're going to get a thin plot, but you're going to get a lot of fun action. You're going to get a lot of great humor, so many nods and throwbacks and everything else. Like it was just a fun, entertaining time that in the end, The Mandalorian and Grogu is a film worth going to the theater to see. It has big action set pieces, even though they can be a little bit short at times. You get a really great big action set piece to end the film. It's got great humor. Grogu gets a little bit of growth, and you get to see a little bit of change there. It does have problems that the plot is thin, and it doesn't really set up anything big or new. It's just kind of like a large extended episode of the series that's not connected to the series. So it is one of those weird, but it's one of those just kind of standalone, go out and have fun with Star Wars again. I think that's what a lot of people are missing, is just having fun with Star Wars. I'm going to give it an 8 for that pure entertainment factor. I had such a blast with the action. I was laughing so much. It entertained me. If the plot is thin and it's not, well baked and it's very simple, then you have to have something else that's going to prop it up. And it does so well with the action, it does so well with the humor, that in the end I didn't care as much that the plot just was very safe and basic and nothing extraordinary, but everything else wrapped around it was so much fun that I didn't really care as much.
It's so crazy how sometimes we can be... You and I vary in our ratings sometimes, but a lot of times we're on the same page with this. We are literally on the exact same page for this film in particular. I gave it an 8 as well. To all the points you said, it loses points for me for a thinner plot. But if you're I've said it time and time again on this podcast over the years. If you're not gonna wow me with the story, wow me with literally everything else. And I will have a lot of fun with it. That's what this is. You get a really, really thin film plot with a little bit of character advancement here, at least for Grogu. Mando gets to be Mando, and you're not getting a ton of advancement from him, but you get some development of that. And it's just a good, fun romp through several star systems in the galaxy on a story that's not really connected to anything else. And it does lose a little bit for the thin plot, but man, like we said, the action is phenomenal in this. The visuals, like the everything there visually is stunning. There's so many vibrant worlds that come to life in this film. The humor is top-notch Star Wars. Like, if you're into that Star Wars kind of humor, like, you get that in spades here. Like, it does everything else so well that I'm more forgiving of the lack of a really heavy, serious plot that connects to X, Y, and Z that they're going to do. Yes, is the property of Star Wars kind of in flux and a little bit of a mess right now? It has been for a little while, especially since, the latest trilogy of films that, I do want to kind of go in like 10 years from now and see how people feel about those movies. Kind of like how they did with the prequels, that everybody who loved 4, 5, and 6, a lot of them hated 1, 2, and 3. But as time's gone on a little bit more, at least episode 3 of that has gotten a ton of love, and those prequels have gotten a little bit more love over the years. I'm wondering if 7, 8, and 9 are going to have that same thing, or is it still going to be pretty universally panned? I don't care what anybody says. Episode 7, in my opinion, still a phenomenal movie. I will stand on business for that because it felt like the most Star Wars thing I'd seen in forever.
Yeah. 8 and 9 are a mess, but 7 made me feel like I was watching A New Hope for the first time, which is a lot of people's problem with
Because
it, that it didn't feel
like A New Hope.
original enough. It felt more like A New Hope, but it did feel like, because we weren't born when A New Hope came out, so this was us seeing almost like A New Hope for the first time.
Yeah.
It has its issues and problems, but I still like when we saw it in theaters, I got goosebumps and chills watching it, just because it just felt like a reintroduction to Star Wars, but they just dropped the ball so hard with 8 and 9, and then it just it got really messy after that. Like, we get Andor, which is fantastic, and then you got The Mandalorian, which is so much fun, but those take place in 2 different time periods, and that's really, in live action, all we've had for the last 7 years is that. And when you're bringing it back to film after 7 years, I can see a little criticism of this just not having an overarching connection to anything else, of it just being a standalone or setting up a new bad guy or a new big plot point that they could follow. And it is a little bit like, all right, what are we doing now? Because they scrapped that Ahsoka and Mandalorian wrap-up film, are they going to continue trying to do these one-off films for Mandalorian and Grogu? Are we going to get any more Ahsoka after season 2? Because it's taken 4 years to get season 2. I think they just need to work on bridging the gap. You don't have to have a Star Wars film or property every single year, but they do need to kind of bring it up, because as much as we love the animated properties, not everybody's into animation, and not everyone's into animated storytelling. So if you take out all those animations, then you're kind of a little bit thin on that Star Wars content. Yeah. And so I think they do need to get a little, like, you've got Starfighter coming out. We're supposed to get another Rey movie that people are a bit mixed on exactly what we should or have there. We've just had so many Star Wars projects announced from various directors and everything else, and then just nothing has come to fruition from it. So they're, with Dave in charge now, you're going to be very curious to see what Star Wars looks like from here on out, because this was really fun as a standalone, but fans are waiting for that next big, connected, interesting storyline. Are you going to give us an episode, a new trilogy that you've had? Think like 3 directors have been talking about a new Star Wars trilogy. We've had talks about possibly the Knights of the Old Republic being made into a film, a
horror movie even.
Yeah, even a horror movie. I am kind of skipping over one series that we've had outside of Andor that was very mixed among everybody, because we felt like it was a letdown as well. And going back to the the old Republic and going into the beginning of the Jedi era, and felt like it really dropped the ball. Like, there's a lot of pressure on Star Wars from the hardcore fans and from the fandom to do something new and different. And if you go into Mandalorian and Grogu expecting it to give you something new and different, you're going to be a little disappointed. But if you want legacy, throwbacks, references, classic kind of Star Wars feel, this is going to give it to you in spades. And it really is going to depend on your state of mind and what you're going into this film looking for, of what you get out of it. Because if you just go in expecting to have a fun, silly adventure, you're going to be entertained.
I think where a lot of people are frustrated is the lack of transparency with their direction of what they're wanting to do with things. Like, and that's where everybody gets like, yes, the animation is top notch. If you're not a fan of animation, I don't care. You should be watching some of these properties as well, especially Maul Shadowlord. Phenomenal series. I will say it again. Watch it on Disney Plus. It's only 8 episodes. You can get through it in a couple hours. It's really not that hard of a watch. Phenomenal storytelling in that as well. But the lack of creative direction for the live action stuff and everything being so in flux, it does have a lot of people frustrated, rightfully so, because you want to see what's going on. You've heard some talk of, oh, we're going away from the Skywalker stuff, but then you hear that there's a Rey movie coming out and she's kind of tangentially connected to the Skywalker stuff, and you're just like, okay, what are we doing as far as what parts of Star Wars are we jumping into? Because there is so much other stuff that they could be exploring. And we just don't know what direction, what they're committing to actually doing and giving us. And we just don't know. And that's the frustrating part with so many people. It's like they're clamoring for stuff, but it's like they don't know what they want to give us yet. And that's the frustrating part for a lot of people. Like, we were expecting this big grandiose film from, the wrap up of both Ahsoka and Mandalorian, and they rushed putting Mando and Grogu out. Fun. Phenomenal film. Like, we had a great time. Phenomenally entertaining film. Like, we loved it. But what does that leave for us, Ahsoka? Does Ahsoka mean anything when it comes out? Like, we don't know. And
does Mando show up in Ahsoka at all, or is it keeping him completely separate from her now?
Like, is this the last we're going to see of Mandalorian and Grogu? We don't know because they haven't told us. So this is where some of that frustration comes in, and you're kind of hoping they would be a little bit more transparent about the roadmap of what Star Wars is going to look like for the next, 10 to 15 years. Because we know with films like this, they do take time to make. Do take time to, because it is so visually effects heavy and everything like that it does take a while to put together. And I think people are going to be patient for that, but they don't want another year or two to go by where they don't know what's coming. And that's the balance that, Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, all those people, at the helm of, the Star Wars properties now have to figure out, and they need to get that plan. In my opinion, they need to get that plan in front of the fandom and say, this is our direction. This is concrete. This is what we're doing. This is what we're working on. This is what we're greenlighting. And this is what the future of Star Wars is going to look like. And then you see what's going to happen at that point.
Yeah, because that's a double-edged sword, because that's kind of what they did after Episode 9, and they announced 5-6 different film properties that are coming, and we got none of them. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest problem. They committed to, all right, we got Patty Jenkins is doing a Rogue Squadron. You have, this trilogy coming from David Fincher or somebody, and then you have Taika Waititi was supposed to do one, and then you have just so many other directors saying, oh, yeah, I'm working with them on setting up a script for this and that. And you had 6, 7, 8 different projects in 7 years that were talked about that were coming, and we got none of them. And now we're starting to get a slow trickle of projects actually getting done. So we got Mandalorian and Grogu, and then we have Sean Levy's Star Wars film that I believe we see next year.
Yeah.
But that's all we know. Yeah. And then again, Sean Levy's is kind of disconnected from everything that we know of right now. It's not very heavy on what, the plot is, exactly where it fits in the timeline. We'll find out more as we get closer. But yeah, the kind of 2 films we have in the Star Wars universe are 2 that are very kind of disconnected from, like, they're a part of it, and you get a ton of reference. You get Jabba the Hutt and everything else referenced in here, and you got plenty of references to old properties, but it's just their own thing. We're not setting up a new expansive character and world and new bad guys and everything else. We're still kind of existing before A New Hope with all the Andor and Rogue One stuff, and then we're post Return of the Jedi before the sequel series, and we're still kind of sitting in between. Well, we're in between the prequel and the original, and we're between the original and the sequel. What's next? What's new? What are you doing that's going to be different? Like Andor, Rogue One were incredible. Mandalorian show was a ton of fun, but it's been 7 years since you started kind of both of those. You need to find that direction of where Star Wars goes now. Are we going to continue going down the Rey road, even though a lot of fans have not been very happy? I think Daisy Ridley was great as Rey, and she could be a really interesting character, but they screwed up with Finn. There was just so much disconnect between 8 and 9. Like, they were all doing individual films without talking to each other, but all 3 films are supposed to be connected. Like, it was just such a mess. Even Rian Johnson is supposed to have been doing another one, even though episode 8 was like really hated by him and what he did. He was another one that's tossed out that he's working on. They just need to figure out what is our goal in our path. Because in animation, you've had Maul, you've had the Bad Batch, you've had Star Wars Visions, which gives you those little small independent really stories and stuff. And you've got some really good animation, but for live action, are you done with Mandalorian? Are you done with the Andor era? So if you're done with these 2 eras, where are we going? Are we going and sticking post episode 9 and adventuring that? Are you going to try again with something like the Acolyte that takes you back in the past? Or should they jump harder in the future? Should you go 100 years post Luke Skywalker and figure out what a new era of Star Wars feels like? I mean, I know they're doing different things with books and comics and everything of that, of going into the past and everything, but it's that kind of weird flux that they're at with Star Wars. Is like, what exactly do we do? Like, our sequel trilogy was pretty panned by fans. What can we do to win them back? And so far, it still doesn't feel like they have a plan. Like, Mandalorian and Grogu is fun. Give it a chance. Go watch it. You're going to have an entertaining good time if you can like deal with the looser, lighter plot. But it does leave you wondering, where does Star Wars go from here? Are we just going to get a bunch of one-off Mandalorian stuff, which can be fun, but fans are craving more of the meaty story with a new villain and also lightsabers and Jedi and all that, which you get a little bit of Ahsoka, but 4 years since of Ahsoka. And like past Ahsoka in episode 9, we haven't had much Jedi other than the Acolyte, which, you know, I still haven't gone back and done my second rewatch because I want to give it another chance just to see, but it left such a bad taste in my mouth because it had so much promise and it just dropped the ball with the plot.
I have a funny story about that to kind of do it, because I do as well. I do want to go back and try to give it another chance and see if I feel any differently about it. But I went and I was trying to watch Maul, right? The Shadow Lord, the recent one. And for whatever reason, I started watching it too late in the evening. I fell asleep on my couch. And I missed like half of the episode I was intending to watch. And when I woke up on my couch, the Acolyte was playing. It was the next one.
You got jump scared.
I literally was like, what the heck? Like, no, this is definitely, like, why is this next recommended?
Wake up, Josh. Wake up.
Yeah, that's their way of jumping me back awake. Like, we're going to play something that will force you to wake up. Like, what the heck is on my TV right now? But it automatically started playing. I think I was like halfway through the first episode of The Acolyte when I came to. It took like a little like hour power nap on my couch, but it was very funny. I was like, that's what you played for me after Maul. You didn't go into like episode 1. You didn't go into Clone Wars. You didn't go into you went to The Acolyte for whatever reason was the next one.
Yeah, you would think if you're watching Maul, if it's going to jump you into something, it should be the Phantom Menace.
Something that Maul was connected to, or something, or Obi-Wan, for God's sakes,
or even Solo when he does a little cameo in that.
Yeah, give me something up. No, Acolyte. I was like, I see what you're doing, Disney. You're trying to push me back in that direction. I will go when I am ready. But it was funny because it was funny that you brought that up. I was just like, because I had to laugh. I was just like, bold move, Disney. Bold move putting that one as the automatic play next to it. But yeah, still, I want to put a little bit more time past my original viewing before I go back and see it. I may see it at like some point next year, but I do still eventually want to go back.
Because we don't really know what other TV we have coming for other than animation. Like we know we've got another season of Visions coming. We're going to have another season of Maul.
Yeah.
But we don't know if we're going to get any more Obi-Wan, even though Ewan McGregor is pushing to want to do another season, which could be a fun if Maul really is taken off. Maybe we get Maul showing up in the next season of Obi-Wan, because if you've watched the animated stuff, you know they get to see each other and meet up with each other again. So, but yeah, it's like as much as entertained and fun I had with Mandalorian and Grogu, I did get left with, where is Star Wars going? Like, what is it just going to be a bunch of one-off stuff and they're trying to not do a trilogy or a core story, or do they need to go back to it? And I guess it's going to be a really interesting next few years if we do finally get that Rey film and we get some more of that stuff, just to figure out what are they wanting to do. Because right now they're just jumping all over the timeline. We want to see kind of what's the next big thing. Like, you just don't know, but yeah, in the end, Mandalorian and Grogu was a lot of fun. It was entertaining. I just had a good time. It's something I do plan and want to go back and I'll watch multiple times. I'll watch it with my family multiple times. My girls loved it. It looked like all the kids in the theater loved it as well. Like, it is a fun, entertaining film that doesn't have to be too heavy. You could go in expecting it to have a heavy plot, but it's just something to be entertained again by Star Wars. And sometimes I think we lose the plot of some things that you can just go in and be entertained by something without it having to be over the top. And we've had several films reviewed lately that we have had that where the plot's not the greatest, so we have to go to these other aspects, and maybe they let the down there, or we know it's going to be really crazy over the top, and we're just going to go in with that notion that it doesn't have to be just like Mortal Kombat 2 or something else. Like, it's not going to be the greatest plot and story and acting, but it can be entertaining still, even if it's missing on stuff. And Mandalorian and Grogu is entertaining.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'll see what the future of Star Wars looks like. Hopefully get a clearer direction from that moving on. But Mandalorian and Grogu is in theaters now. Go check it out. Come to our social media outlets. Let us know what you think about the film as well. We're excited to talk about this film with you as always. But yeah, definitely a fun one to take the whole family and go see. It's definitely worth the watch.
So thank you so much for tuning in. And if you feel so inclined, do all the things to help the show out, from follows, shares, likes, and comments on social media to subscribing on YouTube and your favorite audio platforms. All of it helps us out so much, and we can't thank you enough for all the support.
You can also become a subscriber over on Patreon to get each episode delivered to you early, exclusive merch items, and your name read out at the end of every episode. Check it out at patreon.com/we'll bring the popcorn.
That's going to do it for this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.